Hello, everyone. My name is Mike, and this is the Bored Cyborg. What do you say we go back to 2020? Okay. I'm sorry, guys. Welcome back to yet another episode. So you guys know me, it's mid-February, and here I am doing my favorite films of 2020. In fact, I'm doing the top 20 from 2020, better late than never. I'd love to know what your favorite 2020 movies were. Feel free to do a top 10, top 15, top 20, top 100. Leave it down in the comments below, we'll get a little discussion row. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Now, I don't own any of these movies physically yet. I would like to own all of them physically at some point if they all end up on physical media. That's the weird thing. We're not sure with streaming and with the big studios releasing their movies in 2020 straight to streaming if we're going to see a lot of these physical releases for these movies. Let's hope that we do. 2020 was a shitty year for everyone on the planet, pretty much. But we're not going to talk about the things that made 2020 bad. We're going to talk about some movies that made 2020 worthwhile. So I did watch a few of the blockbusters from this year, but it seems to me that a lot of indie studios, a lot of indie films sort of filled the gaps where the bigger movies would have been. And I watched a lot of cool indie flicks, a lot of genre indie flicks this year that really blew me away, and I can't wait to talk about them. And just so you guys know, the film had to have premiered in 2020 for it to be considered a 2020 film in my book. So even if it premiered in 2020 and came out in 2021, it's still a 2020 film, to me. I'd love to get your opinion on that, on how you guys work that into your rankings and whatnot by year. We're going to jump right in to my number 20, which is Freaky. Freaky was a really cool little movie with some really great performances by our two leads. I don't know the girl's name, but Vince Vaughn was excellent in this. And this is just your standard Freaky Friday idea with horror infused into it. And so Vince Vaughn is the serial killer who swaps bodies with a young teenage blonde girl. And it's as funny as you would imagine it to be, but what's really cool about it is Vince Vaughn is so powerful in this giant 6'4", 250 body of his, but when he gets into the little girl's body, he has to be more cunning because he doesn't have the physical strength that his real body has. And when it comes to the little girl being in Vince Vaughn's body, similar sort of things happen. Like, she realizes how much power she has, how big she is. She's knocking into, like, ceilings and door frames and things like that. She's just unfamiliar with her body. But it also goes into gender roles a little bit, which is really interesting because, again, he feels so unempowered in this little girl's body, and it's definitely a social statement, and I really liked what they were trying to say, and I thought it was just enough. It was never heavy-handed or anything like that, but man, this movie is really, the kills are pretty solid. They could have been better. Some of them are really good, others not so much. This is directed by Christopher Landon, who did the Happy Death Day movies. The first one, which I've seen, and the second one I haven't. I'm not a huge fan of the first one. I definitely like Freaky more. I like what this guy's doing with taking old ideas and basically infusing horror into them. I'd love to see what this guy has next. Freaky is my number 20. My number 19 is the Borat subsequent movie film, I believe is the actual title of it. The sequel to the original Borat movie that came out 14, 15 years ago now? It's been quite some time. Maybe not that long. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm a big fan of Sacha Baron Cohen, especially when he's doing these characters that just put people in the most awkward positions and really shows a lot of true colors in these people, and that is what Sacha Baron Cohen does best. He's like a social comedian that really brings out the absurdity in a lot of people's beliefs, and just beliefs in general, and how different we are, how similar we are. He's great at really getting to the core of these things. In a really awkward, cringy manner, of course. His character Borat is his most popular, and so he did a sequel. It has a lot more to say politically, of course. Well, maybe not a lot more to say, but it's a little bit more it's a little bit more biting. You know, Sacha Baron Cohen is a little bit angrier this time around, because nobody's learned anything, it seems. The thing that makes this movie stand out quite a bit, the sort of added element, is Borat has a daughter, and of course he treats her like absolute dirt, not like a full person, or a person at all. and it's really about them learning from each other of how to be better people, and it's just really great elements, and it's pretty obvious what Sacha Baron Cohen is trying to say. He's trying to sell his daughter to the vice president during the Trump administration. That's all I'll say. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. I think it's got some really funny bits. It's not as good as the original, but Borat's subsequent movie film is my number 19. My number 18 is a film that really surprised me when it came out early in 2020. Now, this film I haven't seen since it came out in early 2020, so I don't remember much about it, but I remember the action was incredible, and that is Extraction. Extraction is directed by Sam Hargrave, who I believe was like a stunt coordinator or stunt director, action director kind of guy, and he directs the hell out of this movie in terms of an action film. I think it's produced by the Russo brothers, so it has a lot of one takes and like really brutal choreography, just wide shots letting the action play out. Hemsworth really impressed me in this. I mean, he's doing his best John Wick here. And it takes place in a war-torn city in the Middle East, I want to say. Yeah, I think it's the Middle East, guys. Again, forgive me, it's been a while. But he finds this young boy and strikes up a very Last of Us sort of relationship with the young boy. And, you know, this Hemsworth character is sort of like your rogue warrior, but he's softened up by the little boy. And it's got some heart-wrenching moments, but man, this film is really about the action. It has an incredible one take, I think right at the beginning of the film, if I'm not mistaken, that goes on for like 15 minutes. It's a pseudo one take, and it's just this entire action sequence that goes from a chase to a fight, and it's just so awesome. The film has a very hazy, warm look to it. I really love what I saw with Hargrave and Hemsworth. I can't wait to see what Hargrave has next. Either way, that is my number 18. That is Extraction, which I believe was a Netflix exclusive, if I'm not mistaken. My number 17 is an odd one that probably not many of you have heard of. It came out in 2020, of course, and it's called Bloody Hell. It's an Australian film. I'd say an Ozploitation film, maybe, but it's definitely an Australian film, through and through. And it starts up with this guy who's in a bank waiting in line, and he's got a crush on one of the tellers, and you could tell they've been talking to each other and kind of hanging out, whatever, dating. And all of a sudden, a bunch of dudes break into the bank and are holding it up, essentially. And this guy, our main character, who has a military background, it doesn't go too deep into it, but there's a line or two that alludes to his military background, which is all we need. He takes matters into his own hands, partially maybe because he wanted to impress the girl, but he takes care of these robbers. I mean, he does some questionable things morality-wise to these guys. As the story sort of unfolds as it goes along, we see more and more of the opening heist gone wrong. And it really walks a thin line of morality, which I really, really enjoyed. I was like, ooh, I want to root for this guy, but what he just did was a little beyond what I think he should have done. And it really straddles that line really well. And this movie is like 2 or 3 different movies kind of smushed together. And like act by act, it feels like a different movie. So he goes to prison for manslaughter. Well, more than that, I'll say. But I don't want to spoil it. So he goes to prison and decides, while shooting a spitball at a map, where he's going to go on vacation when he gets out. And it's this little, I want to say like German town in the middle of nowhere. It's just like this really weird really weird European family who basically traps people, kills them, and eats them. And so they capture him when he gets out to this town, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but it becomes this torture kind of thing for a while with him trying to escape. And one of the main aspects of the film is him talking to himself. He has his alter ego that he developed in prison, and he's sort of like a split personality sort of thing going on that helps him calm down. It's really like his cool side, you know? And the actor is named Ben O'Toole, who was in another Australian film from 2019 called Necrotronic, which is a really fun, sort of campy, gory B action movie kind of thing, but it's aware of itself and really cool. But Ben O'Toole, I really like what I saw from this guy. I want to see bigger movies. I want to see him get bigger roles. I was even thinking like Indiana Jones. He's got the look and sort of the wit for it. I'm not exactly sure if he'd pull it off. Alistair Grierson directed Bloody Hell, and it's a very strange movie at points. I mean, it has a couple scenes that you'll just be like, what just happened? And they're so out of place, but they work. They somehow work. I like this director's vision. I like what he's setting out to do. I can't wait to see what he has next. And Ben O'Toole, I like to see what he does next too. That is my number 17. That is Bloody Hell. My number 16 is a film called His House. Man, His House is awesome. And an excellent traditional ghost story with a modern spin in terms of its characters and its setting, and I really, really dug His House. I got Shining vibes from it, in fact. It's a ghost story through and through, with a creature called an Apeth, which is a sort of witch, I believe. But it follows this couple who escapes South Sudan. They're refugees, essentially. So they escape war-torn South Sudan and make their way to England. I'm not sure of the town, maybe London, I'm not exactly sure. But they get placed, essentially, in a refugee program. They have a house and everything. But unfortunately, they something else is happening. Something is lurking sort of underneath the house or within the house, or maybe they brought something with them. And I'm treading carefully here because I don't want to say too much, but the film has a lot of social commentary going on. The lead performances are absolutely fantastic, out of this world. I had never seen either of them before, and their names are Sope Dirisu and Wunmi Mosaku. Wunmi Mosaku and Sope Dirisu. And these two just blew me away. I thought they were fantastic. Great chemistry. You really care about their plight, what they're going through, the changes that are happening to them. And it's got some great visuals that where sort of their past and their present sort of come together. And it's just a really cool flick that I can't really say too much about. I believe I watched this one on Netflix. I think it's a Netflix exclusive. This is a really unique ghost story. I can't recommend it enough. It's my number 16. It is His House. My number 15 is a film called Uncle Peckerhead. Honestly, the title really doesn't say too much about what the film is about. This is a punky road movie with a bunch of young people who are just, starving artists, just trying to make a living doing what they love. I could relate. And so it's like three of them, and they have a band, a really good band too. Some of the music bits in this are excellent. As a punk fan myself, I like that kind of stuff. Anyway, the main character is Chet Siegel, and she just has so much spunk. She's quirky. I really like her character quite a bit. Basically, the three of them go on the road, or actually, they don't go on the road. They go looking for somebody that has a tour bus that they could use to go on the road and tour. And so they come across this perfect tour bus in the middle of this parking lot, and they go up to it, and inside happens to be this uncannily friendly person inside, this older guy. And he's like, "Hey guys, you guys could use my van if I could tag along." Little do they know that this guy happens to be a man-eating demon. At night he starts eating people. And he's not quite a zombie, he's more of a demon. And it's really just a road movie about them just trying to get along and them trying to prevent it, like learning about this dude just eating people at night. And obviously he's using them a little bit, but there's a lot more to it. They're all kind of a group of friends, and Uncle Peckerhead ends up sort of like a groupie. And it's just such a ridiculous kind of road movie, kind of road horror movie. I don't really know how to explain it. It doesn't have much of a plot. It just is what it is. It's a slice-of-life road movie, and that's all I can really say about it. Uncle Peckerhead is really fun, great performances, unique or diverse characters, all very different, but all have great chemistry. It's director Matthew John Lawrence's first movie, so I can't wait to see what else he does. That is my number 15. That is Uncle Peckerhead. Oh yeah, 14, Sputnik. This is a Russian science fiction horror film that borrows heavily from Alien and Andromeda Strain. Heavily from Andromeda Strain. It's a very procedural Russian science fiction film that I adored. Essentially what happens is, in the very beginning, these two dudes are in a manned space mission of some kind, and a creature or something that you can't really see causes them to crash back down to Earth. One of them survives somehow. The other is mangled beyond belief. And again, I don't want to say too much, but it's very procedural. They call in this young woman who's an expert in her field into this secret facility. The movie's very Russian, by the way. I'll leave it to you to figure out what I mean by that, because especially the ending is especially Russian. And so she's called in to examine this guy. And obviously you can tell the government's already doing some weird stuff. There's some sketchy things they're not telling her. Something is up with this human being, I will say. Something is going wrong with him. Now, I say the Andromeda or wrong, or maybe very right. I don't want to say too much. I say Andromeda Strain because this facility reminds me of Andromeda Strain. They call in the expert, they lock it down. It's all very private, all very secret. It doesn't have like the color coding in Andromeda Strain, which I love, like the security level color coding. But it's, again, very procedural, where they're really getting into the science of things. And as somebody who knows a bit of science myself, a lot of the science in this seemed pretty sound. Of course, you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit, but there's a lot of cool terms and a lot of cool ideas that are hot in science right now that this film adopts and really brings to the forefront. And it's got a great creature design, guys. Very cool creature that is mostly CG, I will say, but lit very well. There is some practical. Some of the CG blood drives me a little crazy. There's a couple CG deaths that are very clearly CG. Those are my gripes with it, but Sputnik really blew me away. I loved Sputnik. It is my number, 14? My number 13 is a film that really surprised me. I know not many people love this film like I did, but Arch Enemy is my number 13. Arch Enemy is directed by Adam Egypt Mortimer, and I don't know what it is about this guy, but I really like his movies. Yes, they're a bit pretentious, I think, but his ideas are really cool. He did Daniel Isn't Real, which is the story of, it's a horror movie with an imaginary friend. This film, Arch Enemy, stars Joe Manganiello, who is claiming to be a superhero from another dimension who found his way into this dimension, and he's powerless here. None of his powers work here. So he becomes just this boozing, and the booze actually has something to do with it, boozing homeless guy, seemingly, who can't find his way back to his world. And so he meets this young, aspiring journalist named Hamster, who's really good. He does a really good job. So does Joe Manganiello. It's really Manganiello's show. And, you know, of course this kid doesn't believe Max Fist, by the way, is his name. He doesn't believe that Max is a superhero, yada yada, because he can't prove it because he doesn't have powers. But as things go on, Hamster sees that there's a really good story here, and so he starts asking, shooting him and asking questions and things like that, and just it turns into this side project, this project for him. This kid Hamster and his sister, I believe it is, get caught up with the local drug gang, and so that's grounds, apparently, for Max to come in and save them, take care of business, and it is brutal. It gets very fucking brutal because he doesn't have superpowers, so it just is a brutal, it feels like a crime movie instead. One of the things I love about this movie is the flashbacks or the story, the exposition scenes where Max is talking about who he was on his planet or in his dimension. These scenes are done in a really cool neon lit animated style, and I really enjoyed those sequences, and it helps flesh out the Max's character. Even if he's making this all up, the delusions of grandeur in his head, add depth and pathos to his character. And it does a really good job of balancing whether or not he's telling the truth or not. And it all comes full circle in the end, and it's actually really beautiful. I actually got choked up at a couple moments, despite the brutal graphic violence and the questionable morality. Questionable morality is the theme here in 2020. And I really enjoyed Arch Enemy. It is my number 13. My number 12 is a film that I was really, really excited for, and to me, it delivered. Does it hold up as well as the first and second movies? No. But Bill and Ted Face the Music is my number 12, and I really, really enjoyed it. Directed by Dean Parisot, who directed Galaxy Quest and a lot of TV, comes in and directs the third Bill and Ted movie with Keanu and Alex Winter back and a lot of familiar faces. Well, maybe not a lot. And some new fresh faces like Samara Weaving, and I don't know the girl's name who plays the young Ted, but she is phenomenal, even better than Samara Weaving, and I love Samara Weaving. So the story is about the opening scene is hilarious, by the way, with them at a wedding, like performing their newest single, which is just like the most experimental art house crap you can imagine. And I was in tears, honestly. That scene killed me, slayed me. So basically, these two, Bill and Ted, have yet to write the song that saves the world, that unites humanity. And they're having trouble with their wives because they're so obsessed and they don't pay much attention to their wives, and they're kind of obsessed with each other. There's a really funny scene at the shrink's office where they can't say I love you to their significant other. They have to say we love you. they don't get it. So what ends up happening is they use the time machine. Of course, Rufus's daughter is involved in this too, but they use the phone booth to go to their future selves so that they could steal the song and bring it back to their present, the song that saves the world, and bring it back to the present time. But when they go to the future, they find out that they still haven't written the song. They go like a year ahead, and they're just even in worse shape. They're split up with their wives and everything. And that's sort of how the story starts out. And then what ensues is, the Bill and Ted's daughters try to get involved and try to help their fathers, and they go back in time and gather up all the great musicians, like in the original movie where they gather up all the great figures from history. They gather up all these great musicians like Jimi Hendrix and Louis Armstrong and put together the greatest band of all time that's going to make the song that changes the world. And, I thought the ending was pretty cool. I would have written it a little bit different myself. I have my gripes with the movie, but nothing crazy. I do feel like Keanu isn't quite, I feel like he's doing a Ted impersonation more so than stepping back into the shoes of Ted. But man, Alex Winter feels right at home. He doesn't miss a beat. But the chemistry is still there between the two. I just feel like Keanu's so knee-deep in John Wick right now. It's hard for me to see past that. But there's a really funny robot in this that is just so goofy and so awkward, who is sent back to kill them but ends up befriending them. And it's just a feel-good, fun movie full of hope and optimism, which we really needed in 2020. I watched it twice in 2020, so that is my number 12. That is Bill and Ted Face the Music. All right, my number 11 is a film that I saw. It was the first movie I saw of 2020, so forgive me, I don't remember much details about Bad Boys for Life. The third Bad Boys film is my number 11. I was really surprised that this ended up being good. I like this more than the first movie, to be honest. The second movie is still the Bad Boys, in my opinion. I think it just oozes of coolness. I love Mike Lowrey in Bad Boys 2, and in the series as a whole. But the two guys are back here. Obviously, Martin Lawrence has put on some weight. He's kind of phoning it in. He doesn't seem to care as much about the character as Will Smith cares about Mike Lowrey. But they still have some chemistry, and it's not unwatchable. Martin Lawrence is there, but he's just not in top form anymore, and it's kind of sad to see, honestly. But Will Smith is great as ever. It looks like he hasn't aged a day. The action is fantastic in this movie. I love the look of it. It sort of reminds me of Shazam. It has these it's a city movie, it takes place in the city, and it's got these dark, almost like French Connection tones going on, but it's even sleeker. It has like a cyberpunk sort of edge to it, and some of the chases are just fantastic in this, and some of the neon lights of, coloring of the city streets. I wish I remembered more about it, guys, but I do remember enjoying it quite a bit. That is why it's my number 11. All right, now we get into the top 10 with a film that came out of nowhere, swooped in out of nowhere, and really blew me away. I had so much fun with this movie. One of the most fun movies of the year, in my opinion. Shadow in the Cloud. Now, some of you may think that the feminist message was super heavy-handed in this. I agree with you. But I think it was justified. I think almost everything that occurs in the film made sense to me, and I was like, yeah, I could see that happening. Was it a bit over the top at points? Yes, it was. But this whole movie is ridiculous and over the top. And I think a really good female empowerment story. Starts off with Chloe Grace Moretz on this ghostly runway at night in her outfit, and she's waiting for this, I believe the plane is a bomber. And so she gets picked up by this bomber, and she has a mission where she has to get this briefcase to somewhere. And so this plane is full of guys, right? Full of sweaty, stubby guys who have been, fighting the war. And most of these guys are awful, awful. There's a few that are obviously good dudes that are trying to reel in the other animalistic men because, this young attractive woman gets on this plane and they're all like, "Arr!" They're all like hound dogs. And there's some dialogue that they say to her or behind her back while she's listening. They don't know she's listening. That is just awful. But this is how some guys talk about women behind their backs. And it was hard to watch at points, but man, is it empowering because she takes no shit, man. She gets right on that radio and starts telling them off. And it turns out she's in the WAF, the Women's Air Force, and she's a badass gunner pilot. And I don't want to say too much about the story, but it's about her journey, her flight with these guys. She gets locked sort of in the cockpit where the gunner is, and there's a malfunction, so she can't get back up. But other things are starting to happen. There are enemy fighter jets. There are fucking monsters in this movie. That's right. It's like a fantasy, science fiction, horror, war, action movie. It's crazy! And it has a powerful message, I think, about female empowerment. And the fact that not all guys are dicks. I love the look of this film. It's very authentic in terms of the costumes and everything, or at least it looks like it to me. The action in this movie, when we do get it, is phenomenal. Roseanne Leung directed this movie, and I think she did a phenomenal job. This is a feminist exploitation B campfest genre movie, and it is just a blast through and through, or at least it was to me. I loved it. Shadow in the Cloud is my number 10. My number 9 is my favorite Joe Carnahan film, Boss Level, with Frank Grillo, who's turning into this middle-aged action hero who's gruff and lean and mean and kicks some serious ass. Boss Level was so much fun. Is this the best movie that I've talked about up till now? No, but god damn, was it one of the most fun. Boss Level is essentially an action movie's version of Groundhog Day. Live, Die, Repeat would be your science fiction action kind of thing. This is your straight actioner with a few science fiction elements, actually. Some important ones, I'll say. Mel Gibson plays the villain here, and he's one of the weaker links, believe it or not. I was excited when I heard that Mel Gibson was the villain, but after watching the movie, I just feel like he was miscast, to be honest. He was using all these big words, and he was sort of Bondish, and it just didn't work with Mel Gibson's gruff, seasoned look that he has now. But Frank Grillo, Michelle Yeoh is in this movie and has a great scene. Frank Grillo essentially is waking up in the same day every single day for some reason, and he's learning the day as it goes on. So the day starts with him getting like a knife attack and him having to dodge. And so there's a fight sequence right in the beginning of the movie where he's trying to we're easily dispatching of this knifeman because he's done this like 60 times or whatever. And there is a counter, so it tells us how many times he's lived the day. And there's a specific reason why he's living the day over and over and over again. And as he goes on, he learns to take advantage of it and learn new things. This is where Michelle Yeoh comes in because it's set up like a video game. So he gets pretty far in the game at first, and then he loses his life, and he has to start from the beginning. It's very much like Castlevania or something like that. And so he reaches this boss, and he can't beat her, and she's a master swordswoman. And so he meets this woman, Michelle Yeoh, who is another master swordswoman, and he learns from her over days and days and days, and it's great because he goes up to her first and he's like, I don't have any experience in sword fighting, and then it shows like a montage of him getting better and better, but every time he goes to her, she doesn't know he's reliving these days. Only he knows that. So it has this montage, and like the 4th or 5th time, he's like, yeah, I'm pretty good with a sword, but I need to know a little bit more. And it's a great action sequence, and it really gives him what he needs to go in and whoop that chick's ass. And it's just great, guys. I can't recommend this movie enough. It's got a pretty solid script. It's very, very manly and machismo. My number 10 was a feminist exploitation movie, and my number 9 is sort of a masculine fever dream of sorts. But I loved it. I can't say enough cool things about it. Check out Boss Level if you guys haven't. Boss Level's my number 9. My number 8 is Love and Monsters. Oh man, this movie was so good. Such a great story, great characters. Dylan O'Brien really impressed me on this one. He's the kid from Maze Runner, the Maze Runner movies. This one, I thought he knocked out of the park, and I could definitely see him doing like an indie sort of thing in his future. Basically starts out with aliens. This is Comet that is heading for the planet. It breaks up in the atmosphere, and it causes whatever's in the comet, panspermia, causes these animals on the Earth to become oversized and super large and kaiju-esque. So that is what happens. I buy it. So it opens up with this little community of people underground in this bunker. Dylan O'Brien is one of them, but he's sort of like he grew up in this bunker sort of over the last 5 years, and he's like 18 or something. And he's not like the manliest or anything or the most courageous, so he gets sort of left behind when they go out to do runs and things like that. And it takes its toll on him. Oh, and he also has this love interest, which is really, really, really cute, and is the catalyst for getting him out of this bunker and sending him on basically what is the hero's journey with his dog. It is a really good example of the hero's journey, just done very well, almost by the books. It's almost predictable in some fashions, but it's just so well made with great practical and CG monsters and a great character arc where Dylan O'Brien finds his courage. It's really a story about him becoming a man and overcoming his fears and standing up for himself. And it's just an awesome movie that really hit home for me. I cried, I laughed. I think it's got some really tense moments like the swamp scene. And, oh man, the creatures are so awesome in this. So check out Love and Monsters if you guys haven't. Just a blast from beginning to end, but not only goofy fun. There's some real heart here, some real character development, some real character work that I really admired. That is my number 8. That is Love and Monsters. My number 7 is a Jesse V. Johnson film, Debt Collectors, with Scott Atkins and Costas Mandylor. I didn't mean to disrespect the great Scott Atkins. Ass-kicking Atkins. Debt Collectors is the sequel to The Debt Collector by Jesse V. Johnson. Same cast, Atkins and Mandylor, who have the greatest chemistry. I adore watching these two. And their relationship really gets pushed. The envelope gets pushed in Debt Collectors, and their friendship is challenged, and there are just many great moments in terms of character work. But why do we come to these movies? We come to them for the action. Now, it's very clear that Jesse V. Johnson is a huge fan of Walter Hill and was very inspired to make the Debt Collector movies. They have that same street feel to it, that street vibe. They're irreverent, they're violent, they have cursing, they're very macho. And I love both of the movies. And I might like the second movie better despite there being less action than the first. The action in the second movie is still fantastic despite a pretty lackluster ending gunfight. I don't know what happened there. I don't know who edited that. But everything leading up is fantastic. And the movie, for me, I know this sounds crazy, but it's more about the characters, French and Sue, than it is about the action for this one. The first one is action heavy, and it's about them getting to know each other, and it's great, and I love it for specific reasons. But Debt Collectors really is more mature, but it shows another side of our characters and their relationship, and I really love that. It's got a throwback to They Live, where they're just beating the shit out of each other for like what seems like 10 minutes. But it's just a great crime action movie with Scott Atkins, and who's I think French is his best character, and Costas Mandylor, same thing. Sue is his best character. He's invoking Bruce Willis. It's fantastic. Watch these movies in a double feature. If you really want to have some fun and some hard-hitting action. I'd say my favorite action scene in Debt Collectors is the opening one, which just cracks me up. It's fantastic. Takes place in a bar, and French ain't having no shit from these very stereotypical Americans. It's awesome. Debt Collectors is my number 7. My number 6. I was so happy that this movie came out. I didn't know that Angela Bettis, one of my favorite actors, had made this movie, and I watched it a few weeks ago, maybe about a month ago as of recording this, and it blew me away and made me remember why I love Angela Bettis so much. She is one of the quirkiest actors out there. I love her. That movie is 12 Hour Shift. And yes, Angela Bettis is back in full effect. She's in one of my favorite horror movies of all time, especially of the aughts, called May, one of the great Frankenstein deconstructions, kind of. I love Angela Bettis in anything I've seen her in, and this is her return to form. She plays a junkie nurse who is running or helping run a black market organ trading thing in her hospital. So not a good person. And she goes to some extra efforts to get those organs in this movie. This movie is very irreverent. It's very violent. It throws morals to the side, but it really plays out just sort of a comedy of errors. You know, Angela Bettis is not an idiot. She knows what she's doing, but she's dealing with an idiot in her cousin, her white trash sort of cousin, and it really just becomes a dark, very dark, satirical comedy of errors where Angela Bettis is trying to make the best out of this, trying to make money, trying to get away clean, and things are just getting more and more out of her control, and it is fantastic. So check out 12-Hour Shift. It is my number 6. All right, here's a controversial one. My number 5 is Tenet. Yes, Tenet is my number 5. I really like this movie. I loved this movie, in fact. I think, at least my first viewing, what I got, I really loved. Do I understand completely what happened and what was going on? No, but that's part of the enigmatic nature of this movie for me. I love the concept. I'm turning into like a Christopher Nolan apologist or something, because everybody hates on Nolan. Nolan is yes, he's pretentious. Yes, he comes up with these ideas that he's like, hey, nobody else is going to know what this means. Whatever. He brings these high concept ideas to us, and it's always mind-bending, at least visually. I mean, Tenet, to me, is sort of a culmination of all of his other ideas, all of his bigger ideas. Memento, Inception, all of these things sort of led to Tenet, in my opinion. And I feel like he's doing a really cool thing with narrative here, sort of an Ouroboros of narrative, you know, the snake eating its tail. I think to make this film complete, to make the story complete, it really needs a second part. Who knows if we'll ever get that second part. But it doesn't need a second part. I like how it ends. I can't really talk about it too much. But I think it would come full circle, literally, Ouroboros, if there was a second part. You really can't talk about this movie too much without spoiling things, but there's one line where, in the beginning, this film deals with time in a really interesting way. Inverted time, inverted objects. So there are inverted bullets. And so there's this line in the beginning where Denzel Washington's son, John David Washington, is the lead here. And he's asking, like, what these things are, these inverted bullets. They're moving backwards in time. It's really hard to explain. There's a lot of exposition, by the way. Like, 90% of the dialogue is exposition. But the female scientist says, it's detritus from a future war. And that helped me sort of click into what this movie was trying to do. And I really loved its underworld espionage. It's like a James Bond movie, but it's super serious and super dark and super stoic and taciturn. Robert Pattinson is in this. He does a great job, as he usually does these days. I think he's turning into quite the actor. John David Washington does an excellent job, another stoic performance. This film's concept is what really blew me away and had me thinking about it for days and days on end. And the action sequences. Oh my God. There are some scenes in this film where he has to go back. It's not quite back in time. Well, it is. It's back in time, but everything is inverted. So he has to put on this mask because the oxygen is inverted. And there's just crazy shit going on. And so the action scenes are in reverse. They shot them both in reverse, literally choreographed them in reverse, and shot them forward, in regular time. And then combined them, and what we get is just this unbelievable, unique action sequence, or sequences, where everything is in reverse. It's just so cool to me. It blew me away. I'd never seen anything like it. Tenet is a one-of-a-kind movie. It may not be for everyone. Hell, it may not be for me on my second viewing, but I really loved the concept. It was blowing my mind, man. I was tripping out. Not literally, but it was tripping me out. I really love Tenet. It's my number 5. Oh, my number 4. Man, when Pixar gets it right, Pixar gets it right. Call me a sellout. I don't care. My number 4 is Soul. As an artist, as a musician myself, this one really hit home for me, and it gets to the core of some things that I believe, that, art could save the world, blah, 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 that everybody is artful in some way, that everybody is creative, and that it's society that sort of puts a damper, suppresses those creative inclinations that I think we all have. Soul speaks to that, and it follows Joe, who is a school teacher, a music teacher, but he's also a really talented musician who goes into the zone. Like the first scene, he's teaching his kids piano, and he goes into the zone, and like music is in the air. He closes his eyes, and he's in a whole different world, and then he snaps out of it, and all the kids are like, "You okay, teach?" And just scenes like that really resonate with artists. This movie follows him. He gets into an accident, and his soul is separated from his body, and he's sent to this sort of limbo area where souls develop and learn new things, and then when they're ready, they're transported to a newborn baby. So it's sort of like a reincarnation kind of thing. Really cool idea. It's got some great side characters, but the movie is really about Joe's journey, just finding his passion again in music, and it's really a celebration of culture and of music, and that is why I love it so much. Just like Coco. Coco was the last Pixar movie that really got me, and it was also a celebration of life, culture, and music, and I think Pixar does this really well when they set out to just write a good story. And I think Soul is a really good story, and it's one I will definitely go back to. It made me cry for sure. I think it was a little too long, if anything. That's like my only gripe, but Jamie Foxx did a great job. Soul got me in the soul, man. What can I say? My number 3 is The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man is one that I saw early in the year, probably one of the first films I saw of 2020. And it was one I was very excited for after seeing Leigh Whannell's Upgrade a couple years before, or a year before. Now, 2018, I think Upgrade came out. And Upgrade is just this awesome cyberpunk action film where Whannell really showed me his chops. And then he gets to do Universal's second, third, fourth, fifth attempt at reinvigorating the monsters for the big screen, and Leigh Whannell nailed it. He nailed it. This film follows Elizabeth Moss's character, who escapes from this fortress, this technological fortress in the very beginning. And we don't know exactly what's going on, but as the story goes on, it becomes clear that her ex-husband, or her husband, was abusing her mentally and physically, and basically enslaving her in the home, not letting her leave. And now he's after her, and he has this new technology. Or is he after her? The film plays with all these ideas very well. It also plays with space really well. Leigh Whannell is a maestro behind the camera. In Upgrade, he did these really cool things with action when, like, the body, since it was an Android AI, the body would just go, and the camera would go with it. And Invisible Man doesn't do things like that, but more thematic things with the camera, like linger on empty spaces. So you don't know if the Invisible Man is actually there or if he's not. You don't know these things because he's invisible. He doesn't make a sound. Sometimes you do hear little sounds and you see things in the background, and just he plays with space really well. So well, in fact, and you never know when or where the Invisible Man is lingering, and it really adds so much tension, and it's so scary for our main character, Elizabeth Moss. The film takes domestic abuse as an idea, and it's a pretty obvious metaphor for me, but I never felt like it was heavy-handed. This is an important issue that goes on every single day, and this film really brought these ideas to the forefront about, there's a presence lingering over you when you're in a domestic relationship and there's abuse. There's a presence always lingering over you, always scaring you. You're always in fear, even though the person, your abuser, is not around you. And that's what I think the Invisible Man represents. And it never does it in a heavy-handed way. It's just a great allegory. It's a great metaphor. And so the Invisible Man, I hope this really starts Universal on a new trend here with making actual good, maybe social commentaries out of the Universal Monster franchises. That would be incredible. I think we're off to a great start with The Invisible Man, and it does set up for a sequel excellently. I love the way this movie ends. Can't wait to see what's next. That is my number 3. That is The Invisible Man. My number 2 was my favorite movie when I saw it, favorite movie of 2020, but something I watched in the last few weeks superseded it. We'll talk about that in a moment. My number 2 is Possessor. Possessor is my kind of motherfucking genre movie, baby. Possessor is directed by Brandon Cronenberg. Yes, that is the son of David Cronenberg, one of my favorite directors of all time. Top 5, no question. Brandon's first film was Antiviral, and I think that came out like 8 years ago now. And it was good. It showed promise. I loved its concept about designer viruses being sold to fans. That's absolutely abhorrent and disgusting. But within the realm of possibility because humans and stuff. And almost a decade later, he would bring us his second film, Possessor. And he took a lot of time on this. It's very clear this film it might be perfect. This film might be a 5 on my second viewing. I adore Possessor. It's got Andrea Riseborough as Tasia Voss. What a great name, right? Tasia Voss. Very William Gibson. Very William Gibson in aesthetic, this movie is, and in themes and concepts. It's very cyberpunk, very chrome. And Tasia Voss is this high-level assassin, one of the best in what she does. And what she does in particular is hijack the minds of targets so that she could more easily kill the person that she's assigned to assassinate. So let's say there's a waiter serving something to some guy she has to kill, then she would assume the personality of the waiter, learn how she's like, and try to apply that in this person's everyday life so that she fools her friends and her loved ones into thinking that she is still her. And so Tasia Voss, you can imagine what this does to the psyche. I mean, she's in and out of these bodies, literally becoming someone else and making these hits. I mean, it's taking its toll psychologically on her. And I was told recently that it could be viewed as a metaphor of the workplace just draining you over time. And I like that metaphor. It has the abrupt, brutal violence, graphic violence that his father's films would become known for. It's got the body horror that his father's films would become known for. I'm so excited that Brandon Cronenberg is carrying the torch. Oh man, it starts up with a job, I'll say, and it shows the effects of that job and sort of the cool down of that job. But then it shows her prepping for a new job and getting into this guy's mind. Now this guy is strong-willed or something, and there's things going on, and it's making him realize that somebody is trying to hijack his mind. And so there's this battle for supremacy. They're vying for this body. And there are these great, trippy, psychedelic sequences of her transferring her psyche to the other body. It's incredible, guys. So many cool effects, practical stuff mixed with CG. I adore this film. This film has so much going on, so much to say. I can't wait to watch it again. Tasia Voss is one of my favorite characters of 2020. I think she's infinitely deep, and just such a great performance by Riseborough. I loved Possessor. It is my number 2. Whew! And my number 1. Man, I've been talking quite a bit. There's a hair here. Go away! My number 1 is a film that not many films come along that make me feel like this film did. I'm going to lead you on a little bit here. This one made me feel like a kid. It transported me back to the 90s when I was watching films from the late 80s and early 90s that were sort of monster ensemble movies that were campy, but they really focused on the monsters and the practical effects and the fun. Movies like Nightbreed, movies like Little Monsters, both of which I think the director of this movie that I'm going to be talking about is a fan of. That movie, my number 1 film of 2020, is Psycho Goreman. Psycho Goreman made me so happy I was in tears. There's a scene in the film, in the forest, I won't say what it is, where it all comes together and it just made me cry because I was like, this is a masterpiece. This is a masterpiece. I had that moment where I was like, this movie's perfect. It is perfect for me. And I will explain why. Psycho Goreman, also known as PG, starts out with a terrible young girl, a terrible little girl, who bullies her older brother, or maybe, I think it's her older brother, who bullies her brother. It's just a terrible person. And you could tell right off the bat. and he's sort of subservient to her because she's the dominant one in this relationship. And in the very beginning, they're playing a game, and they happen to dig up this ancient coffin, and on the coffin is this little orb, and the little girl grabs the orb and unleashes Psycho Goreman, who is the great evil of the universe. You know, he has a backstory, which I'm not going to go into, which is just so awesome. And so he's unleashed, and there's basically the story in the beginning says that he was captured by a group of elite, intergalactic people, and trapped away in this coffin and buried on Earth to be forgotten about. But these kids let him loose, so it sends out the signal to all these aliens that he's risen again, and they have to go get him and take care of him before he destroys the universe. So it's such a cool idea. This movie is directed by Steven Kostanski, who is really, really coming into his own here. He did Father's Day. I believe he was involved in Father's Day. He also did The Void. I believe he was also involved in Manborg. So Manborg is more of a B camp homage with really funny practical effects, very do-it-yourself. It's very aware of itself. I love it. And that's really what Psycho Goreman is, but it sort of blends the seriousness, kind of The Void. The Void is definitely more serious, Lovecraftian kind of movie he did. And this sort of stands somewhere in the middle. It looks fantastic, I will say. It looks great. It looks beautiful. The cinematography, the editing, everything is great. And it's matched against this sheer absurdity with some of the characters and the story and the irreverence of the story. But with all that, it's still so innocent, as has such a big heart, and I adore it to no end. And so it turns out that this little girl and little boy meet up, find this Psycho Goreman who just finished, eviscerating a couple people in a really funny scene. By the way, the Psycho Goreman is this awesome looking thing that kind of looks like the Wishmaster mixed with the Jeepers Creepers guy, and he talks like this, and he's just so metal and so awesome. And so this little girl learns that because she has this orb, she can control him completely. He can't do anything without her say. So this constant struggle of him trying to get the orb, just missing, oh man, and he turns into this sort of pet of hers, and she does awful things with him, and you immediately start to feel bad for this all-evil intergalactic ruler. You are automatically sympathizing with him, and I think that's what makes the film work so goddamn well. The little girl has such a great character arc, despite her being such a bad person. The little brother and her, it's so sweet, their relationship. And Psycho Goreman, I could cry right now. Psycho Goreman comes into it and adds some pathos, and it is just so fun. But this movie, she has Psycho Goreman doing crazy shit, just killing innocent people, and things that you'd never see really in a mainstream movie. So I love Psycho Goreman. It's got an ensemble of practical aliens that are just awesome, who all come to try to take out Psycho Goreman, but Psycho Goreman is developing as a character as well. Psycho Goreman is why I love movies. This movie made me feel like a kid, reminded me of Little Monsters, Neon Maniacs, Nightbreed, but even more fun than all those movies. I love this. Psycho Goreman is my #1 film of 2020, and I ain't afraid to admit it. I just want to thank you all for checking out my top movies of 2020. That was a lot of talking. I'd love to know what your favorite movies from 2020 were, so feel free to leave those down in the comments below. We'll get a little discussion roll. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the video and want to see more videos like it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, as well as the little bell for notificaciones. I also have t-shirts and a Patreon. Links are in the description below. Anyway, guys, I will see you all next time. Board Cyborg is out. See you.